It was a cool, crisp Monday evening in Las Vegas in January 2025. No matter where you were, you could feel the excitement in the air. Almost everyone at CES was silent, waiting in anticipation for the most important keynote, NVIDIA's. Finally, Jensen Huang took to the stage and announced Blackwell, NVIDIA's new 50 series of GPUs. The crowd roared with excitement as promises were made of massive leaps in performance, and as Jensen spoke those glorious two letters that every Wall Street analyst was dying to hear: AI. Well, unless you've been living under a rock, NVIDIA's 50 series GPU launch went on to become one of the worst launches in consumer tech history. So I thought it would be fun to just take a look at the launch from a business lens. So today, I'm going to use the case method. That's what we used when I was studying for my MBA at MIT. I'm going to first analyze what happened, what went wrong, and then discuss what NVIDIA could have done better. Finally, at the end, we'll finish with a little song. So, the big issue was the product itself. The RTX 50 series of GPUs, whether for desktops or laptops, it offered very little additional performance. That's over the 40 series that came before it. On laptops, we measured a mere increase of, say, 15% or so in performance. This is clearly extremely disappointing for a GPU that came out 2.5 years after the 40 series. That's a long time in tech. But it gets worse. NVIDIA chose not to increase the VRAM from 8GB of many of their GPUs, particularly those in their value range, which is the ones that most consumers buy. Hardware Unboxed, they showed us that modern titles when run at highest resolution, say 1440 and above, are significantly throttled by 8GB of VRAM. Even if you use NVIDIA's own AI upscaling, even that, it still needs more VRAM. And keep in mind, most people, they keep their GPUs for several years. This is only going to get worse as games are becoming more demanding, not less. Now, in the laptop space, this VRAM issue is even more problematic. Many gaming laptops only come with high-resolution 2560 by 1600 displays, for good reason. Laptop users sit close to their screen. You need a resolution like this for content to look sharp. On a 16-inch laptop, most people will find that lower-resolution displays, say 1920 by 1200, they just look fuzzy, especially when staring at small text. Unfortunately, as the RTX 5060 and 5070 GPUs they only come with 8GB of VRAM, many laptops with those GPUs will struggle to run games at their screen's native resolution. And because it's a laptop, there isn't anything you can do about it. You can't exactly just swap out the GPU. This means you have to buy a laptop with an RTX 5070 Ti or higher, as those come with more VRAM. But be careful, you won't want to buy a laptop with a 5090, as NVIDIA has capped that GPU's wattage at 175. That level of wattage is absolutely not enough for that GPU to perform well. We've found that most RTX 5090 laptops barely beat out an RTX 5080, which by the way is capped at the same 175 watts. But of course, NVIDIA will happily charge you more for a 5090. Anyway, for gaming laptop buyers, the only viable 50 series products that are really worth buying are the 5070 Ti or the 5080. The other GPUs are either handicapped by VRAM or by wattage. But even if you get the RTX 5070 Ti, Dave2D discovered that it is also denied enough wattage. It could perform better if NVIDIA raised the cap. NVIDIA appears to be making it perform worse so that you have a reason to buy their more expensive chips. Alright, next big issue, misleading and deceptive marketing. These new GPUs were presented as revolutionary, a massive step forward in performance, but if you look closely at NVIDIA's results, you'll notice that they were using max DLSS frame generation. This is where AI generates an additional 3 frames for every real one. As reviewers tested this, they found that artifacts were introduced into the AI frames, and generating them resulted in input lag. What gamers actually wanted was more real rasterized frames. But these GPUs, they don't deliver much of that. This resulted in most of the early reviews just being negative. As reviewers, we had to disprove what NVIDIA was claiming. But the deceptive marketing, it didn't stop there. NVIDIA released an 8GB and a 16GB version of the desktop RTX 5060 Ti. The better 16GB card was of course the one sent to most reviewers. This meant that buyers of the 8GB card could have been tricked, thinking they were getting a great deal, but instead getting much worse performance. And finally, NVIDIA continued to brand their desktop and laptop GPUs the same thing, even though they perform entirely differently. Look, misleading and deceptive marketing, it was not the only issue coming from NVIDIA's marketing department. NVIDIA's handling of the press for this launch, it was abhorrent, the worst of any product launch I've ever covered. It is customary, guys, for reviewers to get devices a couple of weeks or so before they launch. That way, We can test them and then tell you their ins and outs. Major launches like this one, they actually normally have two dates: the product announcement date, where we just walk you through the product, and then the review embargo date, where we show you our test results. In the case of the 50 series, NVIDIA required that all gaming laptops were powered off at press events, and information to the press it was very limited. That was until Jensen took to the stage at CES. This meant that when we visited manufacturers, we could only get limited information, and we couldn't film anything at all. We actually had to go back a second time after Jensen's keynote. For a small team like ours, going back to film at 8 or so different manufacturers at multiple different locations is crazy time consuming and very costly. In fact, one manufacturer held their event in New York City. There was no way we could reshoot their products, obviously, so we just didn't properly cover them. In fact, I think we missed them from our CES coverage entirely. Anyway, when it came to the all-important review embargo dates, desktop reviewers they did initially get GPUs in advance. However, after NVIDIA saw the negative press for later releases like the 5060, NVIDIA decided not to send them out, except for a very small handful that were sent to reviewers who appeared like they had agreed to focus on fake frame generation results, not the real rasterized results. At least that's what was featured in their reviews. It got so bad that Steve from Gamers Nexus, who often interviews NVIDIA engineers about tech topics, was told that those engineers may no longer be available to him, unless of course his reviews focused on presenting NVIDIA's AI frame generation results versus their real rasterized performance. Over in our laptop space, NVIDIA waited to the last possible date to send out drivers. Major manufacturers refused to send us laptops till they had time to complete their internal testing, obviously. This meant that we were begging to try to get review units by the embargo date. Props to XMG and HP for having the guts to send us some review units. Anyway, even so, we had to retest multiple times as NVIDIA just kept releasing new drivers. It was a very stressful and rushed process. Sierra and I ended up pulling an all-nighter to get our videos out. Obviously, we work incredibly hard to be impartial, but the poor treatment of reviewers it likely affected how the launch was covered. If this wasn't enough, don't worry, it continued to get worse. Almost as soon as the 50 series went on sale, it became immediately apparent that it just wasn't ready. On the desktop side, there wasn't any stock available. The launch became known as the paper launch. Prices just skyrocketed, as anyone who had one of these cards could charge whatever they wanted to. The MSRP price, guys, it was just fake. Even if you managed to find one at a decent price, several cards were missing raster operation pipelines, also known as ROPs. These cards perform much worse than what they should. This missing ROPs issue I heard was the reason for the delay in the laptop launch. Apparently, NVIDIA had manufacturers checking whether laptop GPUs had the correct number. Anyway, there were driver issues too. In some games, it was discovered that the laptop GPUs just weren't using as much wattage as they should. It took NVIDIA over 2 months to release a driver to fix this. Jarrod from Jarrod's Tech, my friend, he tested the driver in a ton of games and he found an RTX 5090 laptop saw a 3% average uplift at 1440. Look, this is pretty much a rounding error, of course, but considering how little uplift these GPUs had to begin with, it would have at least put them in a slightly better position. If all this wasn't bad enough, significant US tariffs were announced around the launch. Whether you believe tariffs are good or they're bad, they played absolute havoc with these new products. In the laptop space specifically, manufacturers have pretty much all redesigned their gaming laptops to coincide with NVIDIA's big launch. Redesigning a laptop is an expensive proposition, and I'm certain that manufacturers hoped that these GPUs would perform well, justifying their high price. When tariffs were announced, some manufacturers like Razer, they hiked their prices even further. It was essentially like a double whammy for consumers. Prices were up because of new hardware and then raised again due to tariffs. In fact, my own Razer laptop was turned around at a US port due to high import tariffs and sent back to Asia, only to be later sent back to me when the tariffs had lowered. Anyway, constant changing prices just amplified an issue in the laptop industry. A laptop's real price is its sale price. It's MSRP, it's only there to make you think you're getting a good deal when it's on sale. This combined with changing tariff rates made it just super hard for us to do our job in telling you what price the laptop we are reviewing is actually worth. This issue, by the way, is one of the main reasons why we built bestlaptop.deals, our website. We have a price tracker there that tracks prices across retailers. We even set 2 price levels there that if a laptop drops below those prices, it will be highlighted as a good deal or a great one. As you can see, there were so many issues with the 50 series launch, but I think the one that really hurt consumers the most was having to constantly hear NVIDIA speak about AI.
AI, artificial intelligence.
We all know AI has huge potential and is a massive revenue generator for NVIDIA. But gamers primarily were the people who stuck by NVIDIA over the last several decades, buying their products and helping them become the powerhouse company they are today. This large consumer base just felt abandoned by NVIDIA. Overall, the reputation damage from this launch has been so severe that right now, buyers of GPUs would do anything to buy AMD or Intel over NVIDIA. I'd guess that if there was a competing GPU to one of NVIDIA's, most consumers would pay around 10% more to buy one from the competition. NVIDIA's brand is just that toxic right now. But that's the thing, there isn't a lot of competition. However, it's misses like this that causes giants like NVIDIA to trip. And if I were at AMD or Intel right now, I'd be thinking, what a great opportunity. Alrighty, that was a lot longer than I thought. So, what could NVIDIA have done better? NVIDIA should have known, and more importantly, accepted that they had an incrementally better product on their hands, not a revolutionary one. Firstly, they should have marketed as such, perhaps NVIDIA 40 Series Generation 2. Secondly, they should have looked for easy ways to improve its value. One easy way would have been to include more VRAM. It is much simpler to add more VRAM than to make a GPU faster through a redesign or a silicon die shrink. Another easy way would be to raise the wattage limits of the RTX 5070 Ti and the 5090 laptop GPUs. These are the ones most power limited. The RTX 5090s, they're found in very large laptops. The 18-inch ones in particular could probably handle an extra 25 watts or so. Third, NVIDIA should have just delayed the launch for further testing and for stock to become available. Now, if we put all three of these fixes together, this is how Jensen Sea's presentation should have gone. Hey gamers and creators, we got a really exciting update for you. RTX 40 Series Generation 2. It's got around 20% more rasterization performance, it's got 50% more VRAM in all GPUs, and other features you've been asking for, like 10-bit 422, hardware encoding and decoding. Even if he added that these GPUs were going to be available late spring versus early spring, no one would have thought anything of it. The only people who might have reacted negatively would have been his own ego and a handful of Wall Street analysts, who focus on quarterly growth, not long term. Look, these aren't good analysts to begin with, and quite frankly, the only thing they probably care about is AI sales to corporates anyway. As you can see by how much time that I spent talking about the issues versus the solution, it's a pretty easy fix. A simple rebranding change, additional VRAM and higher wattage in some GPUs, and a launch delay, it would have gone a very long way. Plus, treating the press with the respect that they deserve. This all combined would have massively changed the fate of the 50 series. So, what do you think of my analysis? Have I missed anything? Let me know with a comment down below. And if you're shopping for a laptop, make sure to check out our website, bestlaptop.deals. As I said earlier, it's our website that we custom built to demystify laptop shopping. Clear recommendations as to what you should buy, price trackers and our own pricing recommendations so you know when it's the best time to buy, and we link to the retailers currently offering the best deals so that you know where to buy from. I was going to end with my usual, till next time, go do something awesome with your day and we'll catch you later, but I thought we'll do something a little different. Here's a song that I created using AI, probably on NVIDIA's own hardware.
It was a Monday night in Vegas. The skyline neon bright, crowds packed into the conference halls, hungry for the light. Jensen walked out, leather jacket on. The crowd began to roar. He said 2 words, AI, and Wall Street screamed for more. But under all the sparkle, behind the demo scenes, lay a launch that history would mark with broken dreams. The 50 series landed, but something fell offbeat. More power promised, but all we got was heat. Yeah, it was a paper launch, baby, smoke and mirrors in the sky. All that shine and all that hype for a product running dry. We waited years for magic, but all we got was 50% rise. And if you bought the 5060, man, surprise, surprise, we're singing the paper launch blues. said it'd be just fine, but modern games need more than that to start affording 40. And if you got a laptop, well you're in a bigger jam. Can't swap your GPU and now your frame's a scam. They market it with DLSS frame gen in the lead, but fake frames bring input lag, not what gamers need. Send reviewers the 16GB while consumers got the 8 set. Trust us, but the benchmark show we took the bait. It was a paper launch, baby, performance wrapped in spin. You bought a card for extra speed, but they sold your frames that grin. Press got locked out early, reviewers left in stress, while engineers got muzzled for speaking anything but yes. We're singing the paper launch blues again. Turn off the laptops at CES. No footage, no tests, just corporate finesse. One by one, the red flags flew. No stock, bad drivers, just hope that no one knew. Ops were missing, drivers late, performance throttled by mistake. Tariffs lend the final nail, redesigned, overpriced, destined to fail. Some tried to stand like XMG, while others bent to NVIDIA secrecy. And we, the ones who tried to tell, pulled all-nighters in hotel hell. It was a paper launch, baby, an MB case gone wrong. They sang a song of progress, but we all knew the song. Now the only real performance is found in our reviews, and we'll keep calling out the spin. No matter who we lose, still singing the paper launch blues. Yeah, we're still singing the paper launch blues. So next time you hear evolution, remember what they sold. Hype fades, but the truth that's worth its weight in gold.